What's up, everybody? Don D Model here. Welcome again to Codecast Live. Today, we're going to be talking about objects. And this would be JavaScript objects because we're talking about the front end. So an object in JavaScript is really exactly what you kind of think of. It's not, don't have to worry about too much about code necessarily. You could just think about an object. So like, for instance, I'll just take my ball out of the mouse I have here. This is an object right over here. So it has properties like its shape, which would be like round or spherical. It has a color, like which is gray. Maybe this shine on this thing is a property of this thing. The weight is a property. So an object will have a whole bunch of properties on it, and as well as it could also have things called methods, which are essentially just functions that are applied directly to the object. So that's basically the way that you can think about it. As an object is just like a thing that has properties and methods, or properties and ways of making the object do stuff for you. So put that right back in there, and we're going to go to our code pen right over here. All right. So we're just going to be playing with JavaScript. We can just open up our JavaScript spot over here for now, and then we can also open up our console by right-clicking, going to Inspect, and we can actually just go just for the full console here. Okay, let's open that up. I can close this. All right. So let me just open that up a little bit bigger. Cool. All right. So the idea here is we're going to make an object first. There's a couple of ways of making an object. The easiest way is just to give it an object, and we're just going to give it a name of like person, just like that, because the person is like a noun, and it's an object, it's a thing. And then we're going to make these two squiggly braces. And this is the easiest way for us to create an object. Similar to how you create an array with the square brackets, we're going to use these squiggly brackets, which are actually just if you hit shift on the square brackets, you get these squiggly brackets. So this represents an object right here. Okay. Now what we could do is we could put keys on this object. So maybe the person has an age. So we can do person.age, and we'll put my age, it's 36. Okay. And then what we could do is we'll console log the person. Just like that. Okay. Cool. Now you can see we have this age colon 36, right? So we have this object that represents a person who has the 36 as the number as the age. We could also do a couple other things. I'll put a couple other spots down here. Another thing we can do is we can add, we can just add another property here. Just make it easy for ourselves. Person, location. And I'm going to have a string. I'll just say Queens. That's where I live, Queens. Okay. You can see now our current still object here is age 36, location is Queens. Cool. All right. So the next thing, you can see that we have this dot notation here. So the dot notation is basically saying that I have this object here, and then this property that I have on the object is accessed by this dot notation. It's just a period. The period basically says at the age key inside of person, there's a value of 36. So if I actually want to call back that value, I could do that, but I can just console log the person.age right here. And you'll see the 36 pop up in a minute. There it is right there. Okay. So I can get the value of a key in a particular object, or I could set it just like this here. Now there's another way you could set a key at a particular place in an object. I could say, what's another thing that I could do? Location, let's say favorite food, right? So maybe we could do person, and then instead of a dot, we're going to use these brackets here, and I'm going to put a string in here, and that string is going to say favorite food, a little dash in there. Okay, and we'll do this, and we'll say, what is my favorite food? Well, we'll just say pizza. It's not actually pizza, but I think that's pretty standard for a lot of people. All right, so anyway, age 36, favorite food is pizza, location Queens. So you can see here that I was able to put another key on this object using the string and brackets notation. It's very similar to how you would access the index in an array, right? We would use square brackets to access a particular index by putting a number in those brackets. Similar kind of thing here. We're going to put a string in here to access a particular location. Now, another thing we can do with the square brackets, we could actually have a kind of dynamic key that we could put onto something here. So let's do let's make a dynamic dynamic key for ourselves. We'll just call it key, actually. That's good. And let's see, age, location. I mean, I guess name is good, right? So we just say name. So if a string called name is fine. And now we're going to do is we're going to say person, brackets, key, and we're going to say Donnie, just like that. Okay? So now, you can see here in our object that we've been constantly a little bit, we have the three things that we added already, and then this last one is name equals Donnie. So basically what we've done here is we've assigned a string, just the same way we kind of done it up here, to a variable called key. And then we put that variable inside of the brackets. So now I could even change this to like first name. Okay? And now it's going to set a different key as first name for this value of Donnie. So it's really good for like when you're going and making like this dynamic object that has different keys and different names of keys and stuff. So instead of having these dot notation or putting in these static strings things in here, we have this variable that kind of just updates this key on the object in different places depending on what we want to do. Now I'll show you one more thing. We'll clear this out here. The next thing I'll show you is putting, you could put anything on a particular key. It could be a number or a string, a Boolean. You could do an array, right? I could add an array on here, so I could say like person fruits for whatever reason. And I could put an array of stuff like apple and banana, right? And then maybe there's what's another fruit? Strawberry. Okay. So we have an array of stuff on that particular key of fruits. Now to access that, it's the same kind of way that you would access anything else. Let's say I wanted to get the apple in here. So we'll say apple is just like this. And the apple is located at person.fruits, and that's an array. So I want the first thing of that array. Okay? And that'll get us the apple. All right, so let's see our apple here. It should be a string. There it is, apple. Okay? So depending on how you access different values in a object or even an array, you might have to drill down into objects in an array. And this is the way that you do that, right? You could drill to an object by doing the dot notation. You could drill into an array using the the bracket notation with the number to get the right index. And again, because you could put anything inside of an array or even an object, you could drill down in different ways. So you'll have, sometimes you'll be drilling down into an object, sometimes it'll be an array, and you'll need to know kind of where you are as you traverse objects and arrays. And a good way to do that is just console log and kind of twirl stuff down to see what's inside. All right, the last thing I'm going to show you actually is I want to put a function on here real quick. Let's get rid of this guy here. And we'll say person.walk, and we'll say function, just like that, okay? And we're just gonna make it, say a console log in here, and he says walking. Oh, come on. Just like that. Okay, so now let's clear this out. I'm just gonna re-trigger with a couple of comment thing in here so we can see what the object looked like. Here we go. So now you could see that there's all the properties on here, but then I have this thing, walk, right here, this key, and it's a function. You can see the function. It has a couple different properties. Function has properties on it. It has this function here. So now what I could do is I could actually say person.walk. And there it goes, walking right there. Okay, again, we call a function using these two parentheses at the end when it's a function, right? And we could also know that person.walk is a function. That's what we just put on there, okay? So when we call the function, which is just using these parentheses right here, it'll actually run the code that's inside of the function. Okay, so that's a lot of the way that like when you do like the dot map function on an array is an actual function that takes in a function as a parameter, which is kind of crazy. Maybe we could put in a number in here, so we could say like number of steps, and we're gonna say walking steps, just like this, and we could say 3. There you go, walking 3. Maybe we say steps after that, so we'll just say steps, like this. There we go, walking 3 steps. Okay, so you could do that. You could also let's do a little copy here. We could say walking maybe 12 steps. Okay, so walking 3, walking 12, and that's the idea. Okay, and these things get really complicated after a little while. You'll have maybe lots of different different objects and functions and all this kind of stuff on on an object. And it's usually really easy to think of things in the world as objects. Think of things like tangible things that you could hold of that have different properties to them and have different functions that they're able to do. So, like a person can walk, you could have a person walking, a person running. But it's actually probably more common in programming to have something called a user, and that user has a user ID, it has a user profile, an avatar, all that stuff that's descriptive of the user. And maybe that user, maybe in your application is a object that has different methods, like being able to get a particular user's information, or be able to create one using like a post command or something like that. So sometimes the object-oriented programming is just basically being able to take a particular object and having some properties and methods on it that make it easy for you to, do the work that you need to do, as opposed to having separate functions that kind of mutate stuff. So there's a lot more on this if you want to go ahead and, dive into something called object-oriented programming. That's the basis of like using these objects to do stuff. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this little exercise, and I'll see you guys next week. Thanks.